Welcome to the Profits on Purpose podcast, where we explore the journeys of purpose-led founders and the financial strategies that have helped them survive and thrive. I'm your host, Nate Littlewood. Today's guest is Elizabeth Eichhorn, who is an expert in alternative financing. She's also a founder, an investor, a community organizer, and a business coach. Elizabeth and her team have worked with founders all over the world, and in September 2025, they're launching a new platform aimed at helping entrepreneurs fund differently and build beautifully. Elizabeth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Nate. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, and we're excited to have you. I think maybe a good place to start off here is just to tell us a little bit about your background, because you've worn a number of different hats and seen this industry from many different angles and perspectives over the years. So maybe we could start off with just a quick background of your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So my world of entrepreneurship has been something that was not coming up. I thought I was going to go into a very different world. However, it just so happened that I had been in seminary. My husband and I met there, actually. So I graduated from seminary, and while I was in school, I got diagnosed with severe food allergies. And at the time, I was living in Los Angeles and thought, great, at least I could be around LA where there are tons of options for me. Well, it turns out the food allergies that I was diagnosed with were not things that were readily available on the shelves of the supermarket. So that quickly led me into a world of what does it mean to fix a problem to find a solution for a problem that not a lot of people were dealing with, but I was dealing with it. Mm-hmm. So I ended up being in the world of entrepreneurship because out of my own necessity and realizing I had a knack for it, fell in love with it, understood that there were more people who needed help or access to something that I could provide. So the first thing that I began was actually a catering company specifically designed for people with food allergies. And my goal was to actually help those have a beautiful catered meal for the least of these. So meaning I would find out all of the guests' food allergies or dietary restrictions or sensitivities, and I would provide a meal that was based on that, and everyone would eat the entire thing.
Mm-hmm. So interesting. So a lot of founders, when they think about financing for their business, they'll immediately have in their mind a venture capitalist or an angel investor. Right. And I understand that one of your perspectives is that that's not necessarily the right place for a lot of these folks to be looking for financing. So could you tell us maybe what are some of the other options that are actually out there, and why are some of these potentially a better fit, especially for food founders?
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing is I think that venture capital has a reputation of being the sexy way of going about and finding funding for your business. And there have been a lot of stories written about this, where they talk about, well, I was backed by this person, or I had this person support me. And I think for a long time, the reason people have wanted to go after venture capital or VC is because they have felt like, well, then it's somebody else's money and I'm going to get richer faster. I'm going to be a success. I am going to have a whole lot of money in my back pocket. But the other side to a VC-backed company are things like, well, the VC will put particular return on their investment on you. Can you actually meet those demands? Are you able to actually give money back to the investor in a particular time frame? And if not, then where are you going to go? And really, yes, they may want seats on the board, they may want shares. And so the reality of venture capital is that it's not necessarily the worst thing, but I will say, as an early stage founder, somebody who really believes in the idea that they're creating, do you really want to give all of that up early on? Or would you rather try and find other ways to fund your business and your idea? And so a couple of those other ways would be, you have crowdfunding. So crowdfunding is a couple different things, and I can go into a lot of detail because that's basically a big, huge majority of my time has been spent in the crowdfunding world. But before I go into
Hmm.
detail, I will also say, you have grants and opportunities for grants and possibilities there, accelerator programs. You could also see loans as an option.
Hmm.
You can see friends and family as something that you could go after. And even you could go after a line of credit, or you could do your own like self-support or bootstrapping. So those are kind of seven different alternatives. And within those seven different alternatives, other than venture capital, we can easily say that there's a variety of each of those topics that just goes in pretty deep. Like I actually have a list right next to me, and I think there's like 34 other types of funding that you can go after.
34 other types of funding.
Well,
Wow. Am I correct to understand that the two or maybe three categories, like broad categories we're talking about here, is we've got equity funding, which is basically where you're selling a portion of the ownership of your business. You mentioned a few options there, which are different types of debt funding.
mhm,
But then you've also got product crowdfunding, which could be interpreted as a form of pre-sales, I guess, which is
yeah,
really just bringing revenue forward, I suppose.
yeah,
So could we maybe go through each of those buckets and talk about some of the main types of funding within
sure.
each of them? And particularly the equity crowdfunding, I think, is something we should spend a bit of time on here.
Yeah.
And I'm curious why a founder might, find themselves walking down the path towards equity crowdfunding. Like, under what circumstances would
Mhm.
that be a good idea?
Yeah. So let's start with equity. Equity
Hmm.
crowdfunding is let me describe what crowdfunding is for your audience. So
Hmm.
crowdfunding is where you are going to be able to reach out to a lot of people to be able to get small or smaller investments, and in turn people will be able to get either a share or equity of your company, or depending on the type of platform, could be a reward for your, like, in exchange for the funding. There always
Hmm.
needs to be some sort of an exchange. So I know that people always believe that, oh yeah, everything is like I should just be able to go to crowdfund and everything is free. Nothing is free, unfortunately, when it comes to fundraising. And so we can talk about that in detail later if we want to. But for this specifically, when you go to equity and why people would want to go down that route, is that it allows for you to possibly test out your ideas at a larger scale, test it out with friends and family, and also get funds for it. You're able to go into a raise without actually having to have this really big return on the investment in a particular time frame. So it does give you some freedom to kind of shift and pivot if you need to. Um, Equity, there are some really good platforms that I really love working with. One in particular is WeFunder. They're great group of people who have really worked hard on understanding who should be on the platform, what it's for. But at the end of everything, it does not matter if it's rewards or equity, it will come down to your community, your network, the people you know. And this goes back to that previous question as to, well, why VC versus, other types of fundraise? Well, because often people do not like to ask the people who are their friends or family, close relatives, for money. There's a lot of stipulation around that. We've been told, I know I had for years, you don't mix family and money. It's a messy thing.
Mm.
But I've actually really would rather shift that conversation and say, well, why would you not give people who say that they are like your biggest supporters the opportunity to continue to support you? And in this case,
Hmm.
do so financially.
This is, I guess, equity crowdfunding is really a lot about tapping your community and a network. How does a founder know if their community and network is strong enough to support this and for it to actually be a success?
People
Hmm.
want to feel connected to who the founder is. They want to know something and they want to buy with intentionality. And I think they really
Hmm.
also want to invest with intentionality.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I actually did a product crowdfunding
Did
campaign
you?
on Kickstarter in 2017. It was how I got my old e-commerce business off the ground. And one of the biggest lessons I learned from that, or one of the biggest mistakes that we made, I think, was
Yeah.
just starting too early. And we kind of went into it thinking, hey, like if we have this amazing offer, people are just, magically going to discover us
Right.
somehow. Um, I've since learned that that's not the right way
Sure.
to go about it. But could you kind of take us back from that point a little bit? Like, what sort of preparation is
Mhm.
required to do this sort of thing successfully?
Yeah.
How big should your audience or your email list be? What are some of maybe, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, and I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but what are some of the typical conversion rates that you would expect? Like if you've got 10,000 people on your email list, how many might you actually expect to participate
Yeah.
in your Kickstarter or whatever?
Yeah. This is great. So I also did a Kickstarter, and
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something you mentioned about yours that I really want to call out, which is you had the idea of going into your campaign and then it being this opportunity for you to just continue to build and using it for marketing. And it is a great marketing tool if it was set up that way. Like if you go in
Mm-hmm.
and say, I'm ready to do this as a marketing instead of a fundraise, how do I get that kind of buzz attention around it? And that's a different way of building your crowdfunding and versus if you do it from a fundraising perspective. Kickstarter is still set up in a very similar way. So just for those listening, every single crowdfunding platform will have a different kind of terms and conditions, and you really need to make sure you read them and then understand what is the percentage that that platform is taking. Do you have to do you have to hit the goal to be able to get any of the funds? What is
Mm-hmm.
the amount, like the minimum amount you need to raise to be able to actually
Mm-hmm.
access any of the funds? And then how is it dispersed? How are you going to be receiving those funds? So I'm just putting out that as a caveat. The next thing that you mentioned is what is the percentage? So you have this list of 10,000. Well, your list of 10,000 might be great from a numbers perspective, but if they're not an engaged 10,000 and are not actually purchasing something from you on a regular basis, they're probably not going to be the ones who are ready to go ahead and make some sort of an initial investment. So you
Mm-hmm.
need to be building up something that gets somebody who is going to convert for something, like for what it
Mm-hmm.
is you need it for. So if that is you are getting people to buy something on your own site, you're getting people to sign up for a some sort of form. You need to start capturing some of that so you can understand your own reality from it, like your conversion rates.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a large email list. That's what I would recommend there. If you are looking at more of a smaller list, or maybe you don't have a list at all, you need to start really thinking about, okay, those people in your phone.
How do you do that? I mean, I remember I
Yeah.
had this exact problem. It was like,
um,
okay, I got this
yeah,
name, phone number, and email address here, but you know
yeah,
what? I haven't spoken to you for 5 years, and I kind of feel bad about all of a sudden reaching out and asking you for money.
right.
So how do you go about warming up a list like that?
Yeah. I like voice notes. I do a lot of voice notes with
Uh-huh.
people. So, um, I am known to leave 5 to 10 voice notes a day with people, and I would say go through your list and leave a voice note and just start telling people that you're thinking of them because you are. And just say, hey, haven't caught up in a
Mm,
while. Would love to see what's going on in your world.
mm-hmm.
Hope you're well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Let's find a time. You
Mm-hmm.
can be as
Mm-hmm.
simple as that. The other thing
Yeah.
is think about how you know them. Remember what that connection is. If you can
Mm,
remember how you've met this person or something that you had in common, maybe you went to a concert together and you saw that the concert you had, that artist has a new album out. Reach out, hey, did you know that this person has a new album out? That's amazing. Have you listened to it? I mean, come on.
mm,
Let's talk about then also, like, that's another easy one is, okay, Taylor Swift is coming out and she's going on tour again. So, did you get your tickets? Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there are ways to get around the hurdle of how do you re-engage people you haven't talked to. And
Yeah.
that is often the root of people's fear when it comes to fundraising. We don't
Yeah.
want to ask those people because we have avoided them for a long time. We're not very, um, and I utilize the word we universally. I don't think a lot of people have been taught, nor have we figured out ways to stay in touch when we've moved or and sometimes that's okay, it's seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
But just because it's seasonal doesn't mean that that is not somebody who should not be a part of what it is that you're raising for.
Yep. Yep. I love that. So, when we caught up a few weeks ago, you updated me that you have actually opened a wine bar recently. And I understand that you actually had your neighbors help fund this wine bar and get it off the ground. Tell me a little bit more about that. And is that experience part of what has influenced the new idea or the new venture that you're working on?
Yeah, it has. So Copper Rose Wine is our wine bar. It's in San Antonio, Texas. And it is new to San Antonio, but it has been about 2.5 years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband and I moved to San Antonio and moved into a neighborhood where we saw that there was a need, a missing element. And we just kept thinking, what could we do to help this community? Where can we go at night where, you could go grab a drink, but there really wasn't anything that was open past, I think, 2 in the afternoon. And we're like, well,
Mm.
everyone leaves our neighborhood. So we realized a few things for us to kind of work towards saying, hey, we knew we wanted to have something that night. Then we also needed to get this neighborhood on board. And that is actually why we decided to go after them first and foremost for investing is
Mm-hmm.
because if we can get if once we identify the end user, once you
Mm.
identify who really is this customer, and then they understand how they play a part in
Mm-hmm.
your product,
Mm-hmm.
it's so incredibly powerful. And so that's how
Mm.
we were able to raise for our bar. So we were able to raise, get funding, and then being able to, we've now been open for almost 8 months,
Mm-hmm.
and it's exciting to see what happens. And that's exactly right. To your second point is why am I going on this new venture is exactly because of that. Um,
Mm.
I saw how when we are staying so focused and local into who our neighbors are or who our audiences or who our friends and family are, and we start building for them or we really know who our customers are, we are building really powerful products. And I
Mm.
think somewhere along the line I have seen a lot of entrepreneurs have kind of lost the end user.
Mm-hmm.
So my new venture, Ampersand Way, is helping educate people on how do we um, build companies with intentionality and ensuring that you can also find the funding to be able to go after what it is you're building.
That is so interesting. We're definitely going to come back to this new venture, but I want to talk a little bit more about the wine bar and the neighbors because you touched on some really interesting and super important parts of this whole equity crowdfunding model here. One of which is that I think you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said that it helped you, better understand the customer.
Mhm.
Your customers are effectively now shareholders.
Right.
Can you kind of elaborate on that and maybe talk a little bit more about some of the, intangible and more qualitative benefits of
Mhm.
having your customers and investors being the same people
And our neighbors. So
and your neighbors?
literally people we live next door. It can also get really messy.
Uh-huh.
So this is all about how and why do you build relationships and why do you continue to stay connected to people. The conversations with my neighbors got easier throughout my entire time that I was pitching to them because it got stronger,
Mm-hmm.
it got better, but also I had to remember what it was that we were doing was to benefit them too.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that it has worked is, and I'm very honest, is that we sold a quarter of a share for $5,000, and my husband and I were able to, and we will can always maintain majority stakehold in the business, and we wanted to do that to say, honestly, for a few reasons: marketing. It ensures that people in our neighborhood are willing to put in their own dollars, time, energy, and also getting their friends to come into that
Mm.
space.
Yep.
Um, and that was huge. That was huge for us. Their thing is, you want to help make and shift this neighborhood. You believe in what we're doing. This is why
Mm.
you want to invest in us.
Interesting. Interesting. And so you've pivoted, or well, not pivoted, but evolved all this into a new business, which is, from what I understand, all about helping other founders take a similar approach to financing and fundraising.
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Who is the ideal customer for this business? What can they expect to learn or get from working with you? And yeah.
So, my team and I are building an ed tech platform focused on helping understand different alternatives forms of funding that is out there. And not only is it just alternative forms, if we want to do the VC route, we're going to prepare for that.
Mm.
Education is vital for a founder to understand what are the best options for them. I know the amount of times I was pitching in front of people, and I gave them my power, and because I didn't fully understand what all the terminology was, and I also
Mm.
didn't know what my options were. And so
Mm-hmm.
when a person and when a founder doesn't know what all the options may be, it always makes me ask the question, are you building the best product and service that you really can? And
Mm-hmm.
so I have been really shifting and saying, well, what if instead we start with a more equal playing field? You don't
Mm-hmm.
have to be going to Wharton, or you don't have to be going to all of the different amazing and getting your MBA, because even then, I know people who have an MBA who have no idea what crowdfunding really is. I've been
Mm-hmm.
on multiple panels with them.
Mm.
But what I want people to understand is that we're all, if you are trying to start a business, it's
Mm-hmm.
because you're trying to solve a pain point. And if you're trying to fundraise for that business, it's because you know that it is worth getting funding for. The difficulty is where to find that funding and how do we do
Mm.
that?
Yeah.
So this entire platform is going to be on helping educate people through webinars, downloadables, and accessible spaces versus just being able to, I know coaches who are charging $1,800 to $2,500 a session just to kind of say,
Mm.
oh, I'll get you access into this person. And that's not an equal playing field to me.
Right. To have to pay that bigger price tag for it to
Right.
be that much of a pay to play type game.
Right. And for not a
Right.
guarantee. It might be a
Yeah.
conversation that they can open a door for you, but that's
Yeah.
that's not actually getting you the funding you need to help you actually grow and start, well, maybe even start your business.
Yeah.
And then you ask the other piece of who is this for? Well, early stage to probably 3 years in, founders.
Mm-hmm.
You can come back at times that you're wanting to, let's say you want to start fundraising. What are the other options out there?
What are some of the cons of this? What are some of the risks or downsides? And have you had any personal experience with some of these things maybe not going as planned?
Yeah. Couple things. So, depending on the platform, I think most of them now, but they'll roll up your any sort of contributions into one line on your cap table. Previously,
Mm-hmm.
it used to be any give was like their its own line item. And so when you're going for a more traditional round of investing and people want to they ask for your cap table, and you have 3,000 names on there, and kind of dilutes what it is you're trying to fundraise for. So
Right. Right.
I will say platforms notice that they do roll up all of the investments into one line item.
Mm-hmm.
That's positive. That's both negative and positive, but pay attention to the platform. The other is, what if you don't get it and you put yourself out there and
Mm.
you you've become really vulnerable. How
Mm-hmm.
do you continue to keep growing your business when the world knows that you didn't get the raise that you were looking for?
Mm-hmm.
That I think is the number one thing. And I have a client right now who is going through something like that. And I am
Mm-hmm.
continuously reminding them of the reason they did this was to continue to, get funding. And even though other people didn't show up, other people came through the back door and were
Mm-hmm.
able to invest in her in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
So just because it might not work publicly doesn't mean it doesn't always work for you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if it doesn't work publicly, then there's an opportunity to be able to say, okay, this didn't happen, and start shifting your language and the narrative around that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but fundraising is a risk. Does not matter which avenue you take. If it is even
Yeah.
a grant.
When can we expect to see the first peaks of this, or is it a little bit premature to be asking you that?
Yeah, no, that's good. Our wait list is open. Our wait list is live.
Okay.
So
Mm-hmm.
ampersandway.com. So just go on and head over there to join the wait list. And then we are looking towards middle to late September on kind of the first iteration and going to continue from there.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll include a link to that below. But we've talked a lot about fundraising and the different options, and you're certainly a wealth of knowledge on this. I wanted to change gears a little bit for the last couple of questions as we look to round things out here. You've said that, CPG is a pretty crowded space and that growth doesn't always equal success. And I guess my interpretation of that is that a lot of times founders and, people in the startup world can be focused on things which we could kind of put into a bucket called vanity metrics, right? Stuff that doesn't
Yeah.
really matter. I'd love to understand, I mean, as a founder and someone who's worked with a lot of founders now, how do you think about balancing, revenue, profitability, personal well-being, and what are some of the metrics of success that you personally like to focus on?
No. So I no longer care about my marketing numbers as much as I once did. I cared a lot
Okay.
about my social media numbers when I first started out as a CPG.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something I play around with as much, because I want to make sure that I have enough money in my bank account to do two things.
Mm-hmm.
One, continue to ensure like all my costs are covered, including my inventory. I'm in the wine business now. In the
Mm-hmm.
state of Texas, which is where our wine store is, we need to be able to pay for cash, or we have to utilize cash to pay for our wine. That is a lot of
Hmm.
money that you need to be able to have. Plus, you need cash for employees and for payroll. So, wanting to have enough cash in the bank at all times. So, that's a big number I pay attention to. And then I'm going to start paying attention to my daily sales. And I want to start paying very close awareness as to what are the things that are happening. When do people come in and why do they come in at certain places? I live in a place where it's very hot and it
Mm.
really shifts and affects different people's just their way of doing things in business and going outside. So I
Mm-hmm.
had to shift what is it that we will be providing so that people will want to come. What is that
Mm-hmm.
thing? And so you need to be very creative. And those are two things and elements that I think are really important when you're thinking about a product. Um, Now,
Can you
in typical,
elaborate on that a little bit? That you have to
so
shift the things that people would want. So it's more than just drinking wine.
right. It's
Okay.
like the atmosphere. Do they come and stay for food? Do they
Mm-hmm.
leave? Because we don't have a full-on food menu. Do they bring food
Mm.
in? How do you shift to be able to say, okay, are we going to be able to bring in food based off of our licensing?
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to shift the way that our design is?
Right.
Or do we need to have different signage? Those are things that are constantly at play, and you don't always know everything. So you don't want to shift everything at one time. You kind of want to test it out. I also
Mm-hmm.
know the difficulty is trying to convince a person to buy it from you. So there's these two
Mm-hmm.
sides. And so let's talk about distribution is the best way to put it. You as a CPG brand has to be good enough to stay on a shelf for long enough, and your story has to be creative and able to capture a customer's attention without you being there, and period. And that is it. And if it cannot do that, then go back to a designer who knows how to make sure it can help you. It's truly it. That's what's it. If a business, a product cannot work without you, then you haven't gotten to, you don't have everything, all the things and pieces in place yet for you to probably enter into a larger distribution.
So true. So true. So what are some of the ways that a brand can do that? I mean, before you actually get on the retail shelf and realize that you're not effective in achieving the thing that you just described, how do people actually determine if they're ready for that?
Yeah, I mean, I think working with brand strategists, specifically in CPG, that's one. Don't just work for one that is, say, oh, they're really good at the wine industry. Sorry, speaking from my own space. Have a more broad professional who understands the entirety of the CPG space.
Yeah, so true. So true. Well, Elizabeth, this has been a fascinating conversation. I am really impressed by the way you've taken all this experience over the years of funding and helping other people with funding and been able to now funnel or channel it into this platform that I'm eagerly waiting to check out. I am going to join your wait list after we end the call here. But no, I think it sounds like an amazing resource and something that a lot of founders need. So very, very excited to see that get off the ground. Where should people go if they would like to learn more about you or the business or what you're up to? I'll include all the links below in the show notes, by the way.
Easy. So once again, sign up for ampersandway.com. Best way to learn about me, LinkedIn has a lot about me. You can just go over to LinkedIn and it's Elizabeth Eichhorn. And if you want to learn more about our shop and what we're building in Texas, it's called Copper Rose Wine.
Perfect. Cool. Well, thank you again for joining us. This has been a fantastic conversation. Really grateful that you joined us today. And we'll catch you next time. Take care.
Thanks, Nate.